Hi everybody! I just sat down to do a video on Aristotle and realised if I tried to do all of Aristotle, my video is going to be about 3 hours long. So what I'm going to do is just do something quick on the doctrine of the mean, which is a major part of Aristotle's virtue ethics, just to help you not mix that up, hopefully. So unlike Kantian deontology and unlike utilitarianism, Aristotle isn't telling you what to do. Aristotle tells you how to be. He's talking about developing your character so that you become a virtuous person. So in order to do the right act, according to Aristotle, you have to develop virtues, which are good characteristics, which means you will know how to act in any particular situation. So a virtue, like this good characteristic, is something that's not fleeting, it's part of your nature. And a virtue will also lie in between two vices. So if you take what he calls a sphere of action, which is a neutral kind of action or characteristic, such as fear and confidence. The fear and confidence themselves are neutral, but courage will be the right amount of fear and confidence in any given situation. You can have too much confidence and you can be rash, or too little fear, or you can have too little confidence and too much fear and you can be cowardly. So you can have the vice of excess and the vice of deficiency, which means not enough. But the virtue will lie in between them, not necessarily the midpoint. Aristotle's not telling us to have like an average approach to all of these characteristics. So for example, if you were faced with a loose tiger, courage would actually be having quite a lot of fear and little confidence. Otherwise you'd be rash to run into the face of that tiger. It's the same with anger. He's not telling us to just be kind of like really passive. If you were to uncover grave injustice, the right amount of anger, righteous indignation, would be a huge amount of anger, an extreme, not an excess, because the word excess means too much. When the extreme could actually be the right amount. So if you take the example of food, food is neutral. Too much of it can damage your health. Too little of it can damage your health. Same with exercise. Now, how much is the right amount will depend on the person and the situation. So Aristotle uses the example of a wrestler, Milo of Croton, and he needed far more protein than your average citizen, who wasn't an athlete. So he needed, a huge amount of protein, but that was the right amount for him. For somebody else, the right amount would be a lot less. So it's not about having a midpoint. You cannot have too much courage, because courage is always the virtue. Same with something like temperance. Temperance is indulging in pleasure in the right amount. Okay, so not overdoing it and not refraining from all pleasure. But temperance will always be the right amount. Okay, so for Aristotle, the truly virtuous person has made these virtues part of their character, so that they no longer have to struggle in order to do the right thing. So if you remember where Kant left us with these animalistic desires that needed to be overcome through reason. So to be truly free, you have to overcome your desires through reason, and that's what the truly moral person will do. For Aristotle, that's not actually moral. If you have to overcome your desires, if you think, okay, I'm going to give to charity, but I really don't want to give to charity, but I'm going to make myself because I know it's the right thing to do. Kant was like, that's great. Aristotle was like, no, that's not virtue. You have to feel the right way about it. You have to want to do it and take pleasure from doing it. How does that happen? Because most of us don't start off by just really wanting to be wonderful people all the time. And it happens like you would develop any skill, through repetition and habit. So habit is something that you do repeatedly. If you bite your nails once, that's not a habit. So if you can actually work on being a good person the way you can work on developing a skill. So if you think a skill of like music or dance or football, to start with, you have to work at them and you have to repeat them. And you have to try these things over and over again. And it's not always easy, and you don't necessarily always take pleasure from it. But eventually, when it becomes internalised, it becomes part of who you are. You just take pleasure from it and you don't have to force yourself anymore. So my two boys, for example, are footballers. And I don't mean they just play football, I mean they're footballers. It's part of who they are. So they literally can't stop playing football. So I don't have to ask them to do it, I don't have to force them. Equally, when it comes to that point, you don't have to be told what to do anymore. You can read a situation. So a footballer can be in a situation that they've never been in before and know how to move with the ball. A dancer, not just somebody who dances, a dancer doesn't have to be told how to move necessarily when the music comes on. They can read that new music. Same as a musician. They can be thrown into a new situation with a new combination of musicians and just know how to play. And that is what we need to get to be truly virtuous. We need to repeat these virtuous behaviours until they become part of who we are. And that like I say, that comes with doing it over and over again. And we need something called practical wisdom. So practical wisdom is not just knowing that we need to be courageous, it's assessing what the courageous act will be in that particular situation. And that is something we develop. And this is really positive because it means that we don't have to necessarily have been in a situation before. And as you know, morality is complex and it's messy and situations can be unique. But practical wisdom will allow us to do that, because Aristotle is not saying do a particular act, he's saying be a particular kind of person, which equips us much, much better for moral dilemmas. So that's really important. The doctrine of the mean. Make sure you don't call it a midpoint. Make sure you don't say that we have to be an average amount. And just think of it in terms of a virtue is something that is going to contribute to an overall good life. Okay, you can be, for example, a courageous person who does one cowardly act. It doesn't stop you being a courageous person because your character is not changed by one act. So Aristotle said one swallow does not make a summer, meaning one act does not change our character. It has to be that repetition. Okay, just like you can have a patient person who snaps, then you think, okay, they're a patient person who's acted out of character. However, if they continually snapped, you'd stop thinking of them as a patient person. You'd start thinking of them as an irritable person, because our repetition, our repeated acts make us who we are, which is in one sense really positive, because we can actually work at being a good person. But on the other side, we have to be careful about what we do, because it will actually affect our character. Okay, I'm going to leave that there because there's so much to say about Aristotle. That was just a fraction for anybody who's trying to revise a little bit on the doctrine of the mean, practical wisdom and the skill analogy. Thank you, and I'll post something up again soon.